Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a little bit, but as I said, things are getting busy for me in the summer, so content may be not as consistent. So, excuse me. For those returning, welcome back. For those new here, my name is Alan. Amateur radio call sign N0ZFG. Excuse me again. And this is Reflected, the amateur radio operator's miscellany, where we kind of talk about everything. So, speaking of talking about everything, I kind of wanted to, I guess we could start with a little bit of a recap, I guess, what I've been up to. Like I said, it's been it's been super busy. I've been doing a lot of refrigeration jobs. A lot of home repair. Holy crap! That stuff just never ends. But making some headway on my automatic antenna tuner project for my little Tar Heel 2. So, basically consists of a small touchscreen and a microcontroller that will allow me to have some presets and some auto tuning and things like that for my screwdriver antenna. I don't know. I've been doing a lot of cleaning too. That's for sure. I got a lot of motorcycle projects I want to get to, but I got to make room in the garage for everything. I have a very, very small garage. It's so small, in fact, you can't fit the regular size vehicle in it. So I gonna have to make do with what I have until I can afford to build a bigger garage. Anyway, I guess that's kind of where I'm at. I guess what is today's 7/4/2023, 4th of July, Independence Day. Happy Independence Day, everybody. So, let's see. There's one thing I wanted to talk about. I'm sure everybody has heard about this by now, but it's this whole Ocean Gate, the Titan imploding, and it's tragic that life had to be lost in this event, but it was 1,000,000% avoidable. There was no good reason this had to happen for a litany of reasons. I mean, the list is very nearly endless as to what was done wrong and where improvements could have been made. But this is an amateur radio podcast. How do we link this to amateur radio? And I would like to focus on the communications side of thing. So as of now, I guess with the information that I have, it sounds as if that during descent, they lost communication. The Titan submersible, and it is a submersible, not a submarine, but the Titan submersible lost communication with their support vessel not long after beginning descent. The concerning thing, I mean, it's concerning on a few levels, but the main thing that concerns me about this is that did not trigger an immediate abort. If you are doing something that is known to be dangerous, like, doing deep submergence, and you're going down to Titanic, where, like, I believe the water pressure is somewhere around the order of 5,000 psi. It's wanting to crush you. So if your main channel of communication, or all your channel communications with the surface, are interrupted, that 1,000% should trigger an abort. Not only should it be in the procedure that this trigger an abort, there should be an automated system that after a certain amount of time of LOS, the abort system is triggered automatically. You never know. Maybe something happened to life support systems, and the crew has gone hypoxic, is unable to respond. The support vessel and the Titan could have been exchanging certain data parameters, like in modern locomotives, they have the dead man switch. They have to push this button every few minutes or whatever. You could have something like that where if a control is not operated or a button isn't pressed after a certain amount of time, the abort system is automatically triggered. So the frustrating part here is not only did this not trigger an abort, they ran into this during testing, it sounds like. That's just mind-blowing that they ran into this issue during testing, and instead of rectifying it, figuring out why they're experiencing LOS and what to do about it, they just wrote it into the procedure as normal. So on the day of the dive, once they lost signal, they just expected that after 10 hours or whatever the duration of the mission was, they would just regain signal and everything would be good. Well, that didn't happen. So it's just, I don't know. That is so mind-blowingly lazy and ignorant, and I can't even really put into words how disgusting that is. That you would run into an issue during testing and not resolve it, and instead just write it into your procedure as an SOP, standard operating procedure. That's just unbelievable. How is the crew supposed to communicate an issue with the surface if they cannot communicate? That's just, oh man, it gets my blood pressure up thinking about that. And sure, from in our arena in amateur radio, we aren't typically dealing with life or death situations such as this. But I could imagine, a world where, an amateur radio operator is involved with a project like this. And if I was involved with a project like this, you can bet that I would be absolutely insisting on some sort of abort in the event of LOS, or an auto abort in the event of a duration of LOS. It's just incomprehensible that this would be allowed to continue like that. So, why would you want a system like that, an auto abort or whatever? So I believe Stockton had said something to the effect of that he was going to be known for the rules he broke. Well, he certainly will be, because it's just, I know I've said it 100 times already, but this is just mind-blowing. He also said something to the effect of, you can't achieve great things without taking a little bit of risk. And I completely agree with that. When astronauts were re-entering Earth's atmosphere, in the either during Apollo or the Gemini missions, or even in a space shuttle, or even in the Dragon capsule, I believe you still have a certain amount of LOS when they're re-entering the atmosphere due to the ionization of the atmosphere during re-entry. This is expected. In this case, or in those cases, there's nothing you can do about that. The atmosphere, localized atmosphere around the spacecraft is so ionized that RF cannot penetrate it. So there's no way you could communicate with the surface. It's just physically impossible. However, we're only talking about minutes that they're out of communication. Minutes. And if they don't reestablish communication, within that minutes time frame, or just shortly thereafter, there's a contingency plan for that kind of stuff in place already. They're not going to wait 10 hours before doing anything about it. In this case, in the case of Titan, They were just going down the Titanic. James Cameron went to Challenger Deep. I forget how many miles down that is, but it's like 38 or 37 or 38,000 feet deep, where you're dealing with like 18,000 psi. It's trying to crush you and your your craft. But James Cameron and his team put in the hours, put in the engineering, put into work to build a submersible that could withstand that. And they didn't lose communication. They maintained communication throughout the entire voyage. As a matter of fact, I believe James Cameron said that if they had lost communication, that would have triggered an immediate abort. Because the surface vessel is your lifeline. Your abort system is also your lifeline. When you're doing things like that, pretty much everything is your lifeline. There is zero room for error. There is no forgiveness. So your plan, forgive the pun, had better be airtight. So they were just going down the Titanic. While certainly a monumental task, it's not like we haven't done it before. Even James Cameron said it's on the scale of in the grand scheme of things. It really wasn't that hard. We've been down there dozens of times. We know how to do it. But Stockton wanted to take, I don't know. It seems like he was a bit deluded in that he wanted to try new aerospace technologies and apply them to deep sea exploration. And while I applaud the innovation, one must also understand that components built for aviation are designed around a certain set of criteria that just aren't seen in deep submergence exploration. At Earth sea level, you're dealing with 14 psi of pressure, and it only can go down the higher you go in altitude. So I guess to look at it a different way, the pressure inside your aircraft can get up to whatever atmosphere you have it set to. Usually I think it's like 10,000 feet or something like that. They pressurize the cabins too. But so the inside of your craft has to deal with a positive pressure. When you're doing deep submergence, the exterior environment is trying to crush your craft. And a lot of aerospace stuff was never designed to deal with that kind of punishment, especially not to that extent. I mean, tens of thousands of psi in the case of Cameron's, and I think we were only talking what was it, 5,000 or 6,000 psi down at Titanic. There was a lot of engineering that should have been done that was not done. I believe there was even a words are hard, engineer on Stockton's team that was sounding many alarms about the structural integrity concerns of using carbon fiber in this manner, and he was fired. So I don't know. There's just so much willful ignorance on the part of Stockton, and unfortunately, him and the 4 other individuals that believed in him paid the ultimate price. And that's tragic. I mean, it absolutely is tragic. No one likes to have government regulations, right? No one likes to have I don't like having government regulations, but you run into the issue where I'm going to say less intelligent people, and maybe Stockton was a very smart person, but he was not intelligent in this case. Ruin it for everybody else, right? Poor decisions were made, corners were cut, and people died. As a result, we're likely to see more regulation in this front. The rest of the submersible community, people like Cameron and the like, fully understood the dangers involved with deep sea exploration, and they were prepared to do the engineering and construct their crafts in such a way that they could withstand those pressures. But I don't know if Stockton actually believed that his craft would survive this, or what. And who knows? We may get some more. We will get some more information on that as the remains of the submersible are recovered and analyzed. I believe the U.S. Coast Guard said they were going to do an investigation on it. I would really like the NTSB to do an investigation on it, because they will leave no stone unturned. They will probably turn the same stone several times to get to the bottom of this. However, I don't know that NTSB will get involved in this case, especially since Ocean Gate was registered in the Bahamas, and there's all sorts of shady stuff going on. It's really tragic, It's really tragic. Went off another tangent there, but how do we get this? Let's loop this back around to amateur radio. Let's say, let's play a hypothetical here. Let's say you're doing a Skywarn activation, and you're communicating back and forth with the Skywarn net control at the National Weather Service office, and something happens to either the radio equipment at the National Weather Service office, or the local repeater, or whatever you're using, and comms goes down. You have LOS, loss of signal. You are unable to communicate with net control. What do you do? I've always treated that as you've kind of lost you've lost a huge part of your visibility into what the storm is doing, because you're in communication with National Weather Service. Their office is full of professionals with very high-end equipment that can see, their radar image is up to date. It's not buffered data like what you're going to get in a cell phone app. No matter what anyone says, what app you're using, it's all buffered data. So they have the latest and greatest stuff. If you lose that, you kind of lose your situational awareness, your SA, to some extent. I mean, obviously you can see out your window, kind of take stock of what's going on, but in my area, the big bad storms usually roll through about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so it's completely dark, so you don't have that visual cue, except for lightning flashes as to where this weather is at. You could have a tornado underground, half a mile away from you, and you wouldn't know it because you can't see it except through the lightning flashes. And even through the lightning flashes, you certainly can't determine what direction it's heading if you have no access to up-to-date radar. If you've lost communication with your net controller. So in our instance, when we lose, or if we lose communication with net control, for us that triggers an abort. You return back to your designated. Pretty much, you just kind of go. There's a couple phases to it. Either you go home, and you call net control by the phone, or you call from where you're at and ask for further instructions or whatever. But by and large part, it's going to trigger an abort. The mission's over. So it's time for everyone to go home. This also kind of depends on the weather. If it's an extreme weather event, you do need spotters on the ground, but that means that now you're going to have to switch over to a cellular form of communication, which in severe weather can be somewhat unreliable. So there's that. Part of your redundancy process could be having backup repeater systems, backup radio equipment at the National Weather Service. So maybe you've got a primary radio and you've got a secondary radio. They're both on the same frequencies. You just got to flip an antenna switch to change radio equipment. Maybe you have an entirely separate system a radio, a feed line, and an antenna. You've got two totally separate systems, which then interact with two totally separate repeaters. So you have redundancies. That would be the ideal case, And then as a spotter in the field, maybe you've got your mobile radio, but you've also got a portable. Should it come down to maybe a mag mount you can quick chuck up on the roof of your vehicle to extend your range. There's all sorts of different things that you can do to formulate your backup plans, and you absolutely have to have a backup plan. No, there's no law that says you have to, but you have to. I mean, you have to have a backup plan. No plan A ever survives initial contact with the enemy, okay? You are always going to be resorting to some form of plan B or plan C or whatever, but you need to have those plans and procedures in place. If you don't, it's going to turn into an every man for himself situation, and that's where lives start getting lost, especially in a severe weather event in the dark. So, maybe part of your procedure is you don't do severe weather events in the dark. You just don't send spotters out in those conditions, and that's totally acceptable. This is amateur radio after all. That we're all volunteers. There's nothing that says we have to do this. We don't have to put risk our lives for this sort of thing. But a great many of us do. For like people like me who are on a volunteer fire department, we're just kind of used to doing this stuff as in a volunteer form. Some people aren't, and that's totally fine. So, I guess the moral of the story is you need to have a backup plan. You need to have a minimum of a plan B, a bare minimum of a plan B. You should have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, a plan E. Redundant. I'd like to make, the joke is redundancies. It's not a bad idea, folks. It really isn't. That first time where you have your main system go down, there's that brief couple moments where no one can talk to each other, and then everyone switches over to the backup system, and everything's back up and running like it's supposed to be, and it's an amazing feeling. It definitely gets you one step closer out of amateur realm, out of amateur land and into professional land. So, absolutely have redundancies. I would like to say it's a requirement. I really would. Especially if you're going to be nighttime operations for Skywarn, you absolutely need to have a few backup plans, and some backup equipment, and things like that. So, always have an escape plan. Remember, if the trainer looks like it's not moving, it's coming straight at you. Anyway, I think this has gone on long enough. We're almost at the 25-minute mark here, so I hope everybody is having a fantastic day, a fantastic Independence Day. Hope everybody is doing well. Hope the weather's nice wherever you're at. We are also fortunate to be on this planet and to have what we have, to enjoy the freedoms that we have. Never take anything for granted. Never take anything for granted. And when you're going into situations without a backup plan, that's exactly what you're doing. You're taking things for granted. And that's a terrible way to go out. Remember, it's not about you. It's about your family. It's about your community. Everybody wants you to come home safely. So don't take this stuff lightly. Okay? Anyway, my name is Alan. This is Reflected, episode number 9, N0 ZFG. Out.